Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to the Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for the Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
All right. Welcome to the Road to Concord special on the Road to Concord and how it started in the desert in Sinai. This is the ratings section of our show. For those of you who do not know, this is Annie. She's our Idjit, our youngest of our two schnauzers. She's just wanting to say hi, people. All right. You ready to go? You got to go? All right. She's ready to go. All right. So, July 4th special for the show. 250th year of the United States of America. Sort of, kind of. Monday's show will be titled, We Live in a Post-Constitutional Ununited or Disunited States of America. Because I'm going to argue that the founders' great experiment is over. But as for today, there is an argument in our society over whether or not this country was formed on the Judaeo-Christian principles. Are we a Christian country? A lot of people will say, well, look, Adams even said we're not a Christian country in the treaty with, the Tripoli or whatever. Folks, there are at least 11 copies of that treaty. The only one that has that language in it is the one that went to the Sultan, the leader of the Barbary pirates. That was added so that he'd sign the flipping thing because he's a Muslim. And he didn't want to sign a treaty with Christians. But it is not in the treaty that the United States possesses, the one that we ratified. That language isn't there. They won't tell you that, will they? How do I know about it? I ran across it in one of the many books I have read on this subject, and it was footnoted, and it was told to me this is where you go to find it. So I did that. I went and I looked, and lo and behold, guess what? He was right. There are multiple copies of this. You're expecting the same man who signed the treaty that ended the Revolutionary War in the name of the Divine Trinity. You think he's going to write a treaty with the Barbary pirates that says that we're not a Christian nation? That's a break with the character of John Adams. Okay. So I have done a lot of work on this, over 30, 40 years worth of work on this subject, the founding of this nation and whether or not it's related to the biblical beliefs. I'm going to show you a few books. Some of them, Natasha's going to give you the links to. But this is going to get like, oh my gosh, this is boring because I'm just showing you book after book after book. I want you to see them and I want you to know I've read every one of them. And for every book I show you, there's another book on the shelf I'm not going to show you because it's either bigger or a little more esoteric or a little more, scholarly than most people don't want to read through or whatever, or less important. But this is a subject I have read thousands of pages on, and a lot of it written by the founders themselves. One of the first books, and this is not one of the ones, Natasha, you'll know which ones. This is by Larry Arnn. It's the Founder's Key, the divine and natural connections between the Declaration and the Constitution. What we risk by losing it. This one shows you, this is John Locke. This is a book that explains how the founders took John Locke's work and combined it with the Bible and turned it into a Declaration and Constitution. That is thoroughly biblically based. Another one, America's Christian History, The Untold Story by Gary DeMar. This is a fairly recent book, but it talks about the history of this country and how it goes back through Judeo-Christian sources. And then here's a really good one. This is The Christian Life and Character in the Civil Institutions of the United States by Benjamin Franklin Morris. Look at that. Guess when this book was published? In the 1800s, the late 1800s. This is a reprint. We knew this as a fact before the progressives came along and started trying to steal our culture and our heritage. So why do I say that we have a Christian heritage? The road to Concord started with Moses in the Sinai. That the road to Concord, in this case, it's a long path to Concord and Lexington Green. The shot heard around the world. That's when the revolution finally started. That's the ultimate starting point. So if we go back to the year to Moses, the first written constitution, yes, it was a written constitution, and part of the commandment was the king had to make himself a copy of it every year, handwrite it and read it. Had to make himself a copy and read it every year. So he had to read his constitution. That was a written constitution. And in part, it was led by judges who were picked. You go choose yourself judges. Now the judges had to fear Yahweh above all else. Now hold on to that. That's going to be important to us. That's where your oath of offices come from. And your oaths in government service comes directly from that. But let's go back to the first major piece of work that we see. It's the Magna Carta, a captivating guide to the history of the Great Charter and its influences on medieval England and the rest of the world. It was published in 1215. Okay, now why is this important? This is the start of taking divine rights away from kings. Saying, no. The only king we really want to recognize resides in heaven. And then in 1550, you have the Magdeburg Confession. This is start of the Reformation. Okay, the reformers, Calvin and Luther and all of these had a lot to do with this, but this is an argument against the tyranny of Roman Catholicism and the divine right kings and queens. And it leads to a principle called the doctrine of lesser magistrates. This is a little book you can buy, and this is a Christian doctrine. This is our secret. This is our path to what we do now today. Doctrine of lesser magistrates. What's that about? In short, if the king is disobeying God, the people can establish a lesser magistrate, a government under the king, not as high or as powerful, but then under that government, they can oppose the king as long as they're obeying God. This is our key. This is the doctrine the founding fathers used to declare the Revolutionary War. They were not lawless. They were following the doctrine of lesser magistrates, and they actually appealed to a highest magistrate possible. The Declaration says they appeal to the judge of the universe. That's Yahweh. So this is where that doctrine comes from, and we should still have it today, but we don't. A defense against of liberty against tyranny. This has got a really weird name to it. It's Vindiciae contra Tyrannios, 1579. It's written in Scotland, if I remember right. If you were watching in our previous show, if you've been following along in the Scepter and the Birthright, I want you to pay attention to something. Magna Carta, English. That's the new united northern and southern kingdoms, according to Allen. Now, the Magdeburg and the lesser doctrines, that comes from an attempt to get away from the apostasy of the Roman Catholic Church and the apostasies of kings who thought that they were gods on earth. So that's all of Christendom that was doing that. But then this doctrine against tyranny, Scots. So we have Scots in the English It's Israel fighting for our freedom. Then the Mayflower Compact and its signers. This is 1620. See how this is moving forward? That was Yahweh's people. Those were Englishmen. So your liberty comes from a group of people who are literally Hebrews. Then you have Lex Rex in 1644. This is a biblical primer on the purpose, place, and power of civil government. That's what that is. It's about the king. It's how civil government must come from biblical principles. Now, this is the first of the books I want to share with you. We've covered this when we did a book study on this. The American Covenant, The Untold Story by Marshall Foster. This tells you that this is a covenant land, and he traces the history. A lot of what's in this book are covering the works I just told you. He traces the history. And we did a series of shows on this. If you're new, you can go back. Natasha just posted a link to the folder. You can go back and study this book with us. But this details, and it's all documented. Every one of these books is the receipt or brings the receipts. This book brings the receipts. These previous books I just showed you, the Lesser Doctrine, Lex Rex, those are the receipts. That's the thing that was bought. You don't need a receipt. That was right out of the mouth of the people who were coming up with these doctrines. And I got another one I've read, Rebellion to Tyrants is Obedience to God, the Role of Christianity in the American Revolution. And on it, what we have is the very first proposed seal of the United States, Israel in the desert of Sinai, following the pillar of fire and smoke, proposed by deist Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was not a deist, at least not at this time in his life. Then you have The Origin of the American Constitutionalism by Donald Lutz. And this will trace how the American constitutional system is a direct descendant of all those other books. It's an unbroken line from Moses to the Magna Carta, the Lesser Magistrates. It's an unbroken line of essentially an appeal to rule by law, constitutional law, in accordance with the revealed divine law of Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Moses. Now, here's another book that you might actually want to buy and put in your library if you don't have it. Defending the Declaration, How the Bible and Christianity Influenced the Writing of the Declaration of Independence by Gary T. Amos. This is one of the ones, Natasha. Oh boy, does he bring the receipts. He also tells you that the pursuit of happiness in your declaration is not happy, happy, joy, joy, happiness. It means the right to pursue a moral and virtuous life. Pursuit of conscience. And he traces it back to the English common law system under Sir William Blackstone. And he even cites the writing by Blackstone where that phrase is first used. It also tells you that the God of nature and nature's God or whatever, that's not any God. That's Yahweh, the God of the Bible. It's in Sir William Blackstone's writings, who, by the way, was the primary source of law, common law, for the colonies. Everybody who was anybody had a copy of William Blackstone's commentaries on the English common law in the colonies at the time of the Revolution. And yeah, a lot of cases, even the common man knew about that. Finally, you have Christianity and the Constitution, the Faith of Our Founding Fathers, by John Eadsmo. This one here shows you how the Ten Commandments was written into your Constitution. The one you currently you think you're living under, it's full of the principles of the Bible, including the three divisions of the, executive and judiciary and the legislative. Madison found those in the book of Isaiah. His words, not mine. We know that from the notes of the Constitution of the Constitutional Convention, notes that Madison took that he wasn't supposed to. Then the New England pulpit in the American Revolution, it says, when American pastors preached politics, resisted tyranny, and founded a nation on the Bible, by Alice M. Baldwin. Do you know that they even had a sermon on the canon? Yeah, boom, boom, on cannons. They preached a sermon on cannons in the time of the Revolution. This got some of those preachings in it. It's Black Robe Regiment. There was a movie out here recently about Witherspoon. Witherspoon or Whitfield, a preacher. And if you can find it, go watch it, because I think it was George Whitfield. He's one of the leaders of the Founding Fathers. And before we get to any more of this, no, let's keep going. David Barton. If you don't know who he is, boy, he has the largest privately owned collection of founding documents in the world. And the only collection larger than his is the Congressional Library. And he rivals it. Original documents, literally written by the hands of our founding, literally, not just copied. He's got the paper that they put their hand to. He can rattle this stuff off like nobody's business. America's Godly Heritage, just a little book. If you want to teach your children, little bitty book on Amazon, man. It's just David Barton. Go look them up. $5, $6. Pastors in Christianity and Civil Government, David Barton. He shows you how the pastors were part of the founding of this country. Now, this man in the picture, he preached a sermon. He took off his preacher's robes and he's wearing the uniform of a Continental Army, the colonial army captain in the army underneath. And he picks up a rifle and he marches out and he joins the revolution right after his sermon. Good stories that have been taken from you. And then Barton has another one here, Separation of Church and State, what the founders meant by it. Little bitty book, cheap, very affordable, very informative. It is not what we have today. We're being lied to by our government and our schools. Keys to Good Government, according to the Founding Fathers. We're going to get to some of their quotes. This is all just about, you need the Bible. You need the Bible. And then something I highly recommend, if you buy no other book on the subject of the founding of the United States and what was originally intended, you should read Original Intent, The Courts, the Constitution, and Religion by David Barton. This is the last one that Tasha's going to give you the link to. It's $11 or $12 on Amazon. He brings the receipts, baby. He gives you the law cases. He hammers the world in which we live today. It is known that we are living lawlessly. Now, I can't comment on the board from Natasha. So basically, look up David Barton. Yeah, in a lot of ways, because there's two more I'm going to share with you real quick. I can't follow the founders. They were Masons. He's got a book, The Question of Freemasonry and the Founding Fathers. It's not that big. Do you know that the Founding Fathers chased Freemasonry out of the United States, out of the colonies after it was founded as the United States? Freemasonry didn't return until about 1823, after the founders had all died. So much for them being Freemasons and Illuminati and conspiracy theorists. They chased the Masonry out of the nation. And before they did that, it wasn't what it is today. It was thoroughly Christian. And the only reason they joined it is for like joining the local chapter on the Better Business Bureau or whatever. It was mostly for social and business. It was like LinkedIn. It was just for connections, political connections. But I can't have anything to do with the founding. They were racists. Really? Setting the record straight, American History in Black and White, David Barton. And he'll tell you the story about how many blacks were heroes of the revolution. Yes, heroes. Yeah, when you see that painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware, the third man in the bow of that boat, right there behind Washington's leg, is a black man. That was Washington's aide. He's not a slave. He's free. And he's there right on the tip of that boat going across the Delaware to go into combat. There's another famous painting of a black patriot. He's standing up on a rampart holding the colors, the flag. There was a battle. The leader of that battle fell. He was a local businessman. He picked up the colors and he carried that battle to success. And we won that battle in the revolution, led by a black man. We had black legislatures at the time. The race history in this country, the only reason that the original Declaration decried slavery as one of the evils forced upon it by the crown. Jefferson wanted to use the Declaration to outlaw it. The only reason that didn't happen at that time was because they would have lost two of the southern states. I think it's South Carolina and Georgia. And they needed the states in order to win their sovereignty, to win against the crown. They could not be divided. So it was political expediency. And this is something we should learn from the Bible. How many times does Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob do things that they shouldn't have done because of expediency, materially? Instead of trusting God, They took things into their own hands. The founding fathers should have abolished slavery with the Declaration and then just trusted that God would take care of this. And somehow it would have. It would have, because this is a prophetic land. It was going to happen. But because they didn't, we now have this issue of racism and slavery in our past, which is being used as a wedge to destroy us. And we cannot and will not teach the true history of this issue. This is where the 3/5 clause comes from. It was written into the Constitution to guarantee that the Southern states would eventually have to do away with slavery, or they would be ruled by the Northern states, simply means of population growth. And that is what the quote in the Jefferson Monument is all about, where he's, to paraphrase it, God is just, and I tremble for my nation that his judgment will not sleep forever. He's writing about the original sin of slavery. Well, Joe Jefferson owned slaves. It was illegal for him to free them. If he freed them, he had to have enough money to take care of them and make sure they never became a burden on society. He didn't have that type of money. Why? Because he was spending it to take care of his slaves, whom he inherited. He never bought one. He didn't want them. It was an abhorrent to him. His slaves, when he finally died, they stayed on with him. They stayed on his home because of their respect for him. He was not father of that lady's child. That was his brother. We know that from genetics. We have maligned our founding fathers. We have maligned the founding of this nation. We have lost track of where it came from, and it's been done to us intentionally. Now, in a second half of this second half of the show, I'm going to read some things to you that are on our blog page, The Road to Concord. And a lot of it is from a guy named Joseph Story. Now, he's not exactly a hero to me because he's a Hamiltonian, and I don't like Hamilton. But he's considered to be the preeminent expert on the United States Constitution from the time of the founding fathers. He was on the Supreme Court. He was alive at the time this was all happening. He was a child, but he was alive during the Revolution. He lived through it. He has a book called The Familiar Expositions of the Constitution of the United States. Joseph Story, Justice of the United States Supreme Court from 1811 to 1845. That right there. This is the book that our SCOTUS right now should be reading. Between this and the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, there's very little that we need to, how do I interpret that? Go back. Well, that's not what they meant. They said, when you interpret the Constitution, go back to the original writing of the law, in this case, the Constitution. Look into the records that they left us to see what they were trying to do and follow the spirit of that discussion as they finally ratified it. Now, if you do that, you'll find out that the Second Amendment applies to every type of arms. Well, no, they didn't mean nuclear weapons, Joe. It says all the weapons of the ordinary soldier. During the Persian Gulf War, I call it Desert Storm, there were some ordinary soldiers off to the left-hand side of me. Just soldiers. There was their regular officer, probably a captain. It was one unit of self-propelled vehicles. They were out there with a security team around them, and they were flying a little white triangle with a blue line on it. It means they were nuclear armed. They had tactical nuclear weapons. They were ordinary soldiers under the command, more than likely, of nothing but a captain. So yes, the founding fathers, if you could have afforded to do it, would have allowed you to have a nuclear weapon. Why? The Second Amendment was not written for you to hunt or defend yourself. It was written so that you could go to war against the government when it became tyrannical, not if. They said when. Now, where do I get all that from? None other than Trench Tolcott, or Tolcott, Trench, whatever. He's co-author of the amendment. Now, what's that got to do with the Bible? The Bible says that if you see a man coming to kill you, jump up and kill him first, even in the middle of the night. That's in the law. That's a commandment. It's a commandment of self-defense, not vigilantism. Now, they did have the avenger of blood. If you committed murder, I was allowed to hunt you down and kill you in return, because the commandment is blood for blood. If a man kills, so shall his life be taken by man, so that the evil will be removed from amongst you. That's written into our laws. That comes from the Bible. Your protection of property comes from the Bible. Thou shalt not steal. Guess what's implied by the idea of thou shalt not steal? Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods or take thy neighbor's goods. What's implied is that those are theirs. That's property, folks. That's property. Used to be you had to justify a divorce. And if you couldn't prove just cause for divorce, you weren't allowed to have a divorce. Why? Because it was put together by God. It wasn't meant to be, it was a covenant. It wasn't meant to be taken lightly. Now, all these excuses, I don't want to live with somebody. That's all just, hey, that's the devil tearing us apart. That's Satan. Your bankruptcy laws, that's connected to the Shemitah and the Jubilee. It's a biblical principle. The Bible writes the weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. So Jew and Christian worshipers, it writes the weekend into the Bible. Into the Constitution. That's written into it. All sorts of things. The principle of if you have a court case and it's equal, then you find in favor of the poorer man. That's a biblical principle. That's in your Constitution. Did you know that? The idea of elections. Not the way we do it, but representative elections. That comes straight out of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. Comes out of the Exodus story. The division of our government, the first 3 branches, comes right out of the book of Isaiah. Over and over and over and over and over and over again. 1/3 of the things that the founders cited during that time period, over 1/3, was citing the Bible in their private letters and in their debates. When we come back from the bottom of the hour break, we're going to read some of what they said from their pens. 3 minutes. See you then. Natasha, I figured out how Charlie claims his gold finger, where he can just fix electronics by touching them. He takes the mojo from his electronics, transfers it to yours, and then never goes back and fixes his stuff. Charlie's having all sorts of trouble with his computers at home. And he has been for a while. And for an IT guy, he's kind of curious that he never goes and fixes anything. So it's just, I find it amusing. Yep, the George Whitfield movie is called The Great Awakening, and I want to see it. All right, so let's do this. You go to the Road to Concord. I haven't updated it in a while, but right up here it says Original Intent, Christian Foundation. And you will find everything I'm going to be reading from today. Like right here, the biblical concepts built into the Declaration and the Constitution. I'm not going to read that one, but if you want to go back later, you'll find it all here. Where I want to start with is oaths, religion in our legal system. This is part of the Constitution. Now, I'm not going to read the part I wrote. I just want to read the part that the Founding Fathers wrote. Supreme Court Justice James Iredell. According to the modern definition, 1788 is when this is being done, of an oath, it is considered a, quote, solemn appeal to the supreme being for truth of what is said by a person who believes in the existence of a supreme being and in a future state of rewards and punishments according to that form which would bind his conscience most. So in other words, if you are not a believer in the Judeo-Christian or Muslim religion, you cannot be a member of the United States government because you can't take an oath. Now, we have later changed it to just swear an affirmation. That would require a constitutional amendment, which we have not passed. So I know we wrote a law that changes it, but that law is unconstitutional, according to this Supreme Court justice. And when you read this, if you think this is, any supreme being, you be careful with that. He's just reading a definition. Here, John Witherspoon, signer of the Declaration of Independence. An oath is an appeal to God. Witherspoon, folks, he's a pastor. He's Christian. The searcher of hearts, for the truth of what we say and always express or suppose and appreciate of his judgment upon us if we prevaricate. In other words, if we're disingenuous, if we lie. An oath, therefore, implies a belief in God and his providence, and indeed is an act of worship. Persons entering on public offices are also often obliged to make an oath that they will faithfully execute their trust. In vows, there is no party but God and the person himself who makes this vow. He's swearing about Yahweh, not Allah. How do I know that? Nowhere in the Quran does it say Allah searches your heart. Satan can't claim that ability. That belongs only to the Creator. So that is Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Must be, by definition. Chancellor James Kent, a founding father of the American jurisprudence, he's a founder of our legal system, in the case of People versus Ruggles, 1811, notes the following. Christianity was parcel of the law, and to cast contemptuous, meaning insulting reproaches upon it, tends to weaken the efficacy, the effectiveness of oaths. In the Commonwealth versus Wolfe, 1817, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania explained the following. Laws cannot be administered in any civilized government unless the people are taught to revere the sanctity of an oath. Sanctity means it's religious protections. It is of the utmost moment, therefore, that they should be reminded of their religious duties. So you have religious duties as part and parcel of a citizenry. On a House Judiciary Committee, declared laws will not have permanence of power without the sanction of religious sentiment, without a firm belief that there is a power above us that will reward our virtues and punish our vices. In other words, the House Judiciary Committee found that without religion, the law is useless. In an argument before the Supreme Court, Daniel Webster, the great defender of the Constitution, our system of oaths in all our courts by which we hold liberty and property and all our rights are founded on or rest on Christianity and religious belief. And then Joseph Story, he wrote that book that I just held up. He's the he is the preeminent authority on the Constitution as it was ratified in the founding time. He says, we all know that the doctrine of the law is that there must be in every person who enters court as a witness, be he Christian or Hindu, there must be a firm conviction on his mind that falsehood or perjury will be punished either in this world or the next, or he cannot be admitted as a witness. If he has not this belief, he is disenfranchised, not even admitted in the court. So if you are not a practicing believer of some religion that believes in judgment in the afterlife, which would outlaw a Hindu, you're not even supposed to be in the United States court system. That is, according to Story, that is part and parcel in the law. It was understood at the time the Constitution was ratified. It didn't need to be explained or written. It was a common understanding. Just like I don't have to explain to you that I breathe in and breathe out to live today. You know this. He also says, Joseph Story, infidels, meaning atheists, and pagans, non-Christians, were banished from the halls of justice as unworthy of credit, meaning you couldn't trust them. Justice of the Supreme Court William Rehnquist has addressed which side of the argument over the secular nature of our founding is correct. He says, history must judge whether it was the father of his country in 1789 or a majority of the court today, which has strayed from the meaning of the First Amendment. He's telling you that Washington knows more about the First Amendment than we do here today in modern times. So an oath of office, if you're a non-believer, you're not supposed to even be in office. And if you ever break your promises while in office or fail to uphold your oath of office, all believers should vehemently attack you because you are now in violation to your promises to Yahweh. But we don't take oaths. We've lost the idea of oath and honor and the importance and permanency of covenant. We've lost the religious sentiments upon which our nation is founded. Now, First Amendment. Show you how godless the founding fathers were when they founded this country. George Mason, he's a member of the Constitutional Convention and a father of the Bill of Rights, says, all men have an equal, natural, and unalienable right to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience, and that no particular sect or society of Christians ought to be favored or established by law in preference to others. Sect means denomination. That's their word back then. The First Amendment did not cover other religions. Hold on. I know you don't believe that, but just hold on. James Madison, author of the Constitution, the Federalist Papers. The civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship, nor shall any national religion be established. That's what the First Amendment was about, a national religion. But notice this. The civil rights of no one can be abridged according to religious belief. Well, that means Islam cannot be allowed in the United States because by its teaching, it abridges the civil rights of everybody else. And technically, you could make the same argument about the Roman Catholics. And the founders did because they owed allegiance to the Pope, not to God or the country and the Constitution, but to the Pope first. And they do. Sorry, I was raised Catholic. I know that. So technically, Roman Catholics are not supposed to be protected by any of this either. From the Annals of Congress, June 8th, 1789, until September 25th, 1789. This is in that book I have. It is taken from the debates on the First Amendment. August 15, 1789, Mr. Peter Sylvester of New York had some doubts. He feared the First Amendment, might be thought to have a tendency to abolish religion altogether, which is exactly what's happened. Mr. Eldridge Gerry of Massachusetts said it would read better if it was that, quote, no religious doctrine shall be established by law, meaning swearing one Christian doctrine over another. Mr. James Madison of Virginia said he apprehended that the meaning of the words to be that Congress should not establish a religion and enforce the legal observation of it by law. Madison was that he was the one who had written the language that they were currently debating. And this is how he said he interpreted it. But folks, right there, Madison has told you how to interpret the First Amendment because that his language was the one that was eventually ratified, him and another co-author. He's told you how to interpret it. The courts have ignored him. He is the authority. There is no higher authority on how it was done. This is how they ratified it. It continues. The states seem to entertain an opinion that under the clause of the Constitution, it enabled them, Congress, to make laws of such nature as might establish a national religion. To prevent these effects, he presumed the amendment was intended. Mr. Madison thought if the word national was inserted before religion, it would satisfy the minds of the honorable gentlemen. I wish they had done that. He thought if the word national was introduced, it would point the amendment directly to the object it was intended to prevent. How is this not being addressed? This is in the congressional record. This is part and parcel of the First Amendment. And they are not talking about any religion. This is from Samuel Johnston from the state of North Carolina. I hope, therefore, that gentlemen will see that there is no cause of fear that any one religion shall be exclusively established. Again, he's not talking about Islam or Hinduism or any other religion. Joseph Story. The whole power over the subject of religion is left exclusively to the state governments to be acted upon to their own sense of justice in the state constitutions. This is why states originally had official religions. States were allowed to establish them, not the federal government. From no less than Thomas Jefferson. Certainly no power to prescribe any religious exercise or to assume authority in any religious discipline has been delegated to the federal government. It must then rest with the states, which does not mean that the federal government can be secular. Because if it's secular, you can't take an oath of office. And if you can't take an oath of office, there is no federal government. It just means that the federal government is not to dictate matters of religion to the entire nation. Now, from the different states, from New Hampshire, every denomination of Christian shall be equally under the protection of the law. This is from their constitutions. And no subordination of any one sect or denomination to another shall be established by law. This is what the prevailing mood of the time was. The First Amendment was not meant to level all religions equal. It was meant to keep you from putting one denomination of Christianity over another, as had been the cause of the wars in Europe and England. From New Jersey, there shall be no establishment of any one religious sect in preference to another. That sect, that is not other religions. They use the word pagan or infidel for other religions. Sect means denomination, which refers to Christianity. If you are not immersed in the writing of the time, you will not see this. I have been immersed in tens of thousands of pages of the writing of the time in my life. From North Carolina, there shall be no establishment of any one religious church or denomination in this state in preference to another. Again, that's going to refer to Christianity. From Connecticut, and each and every society or denomination of Christians in this state shall have and enjoy the same and equal powers, rights, and privileges. Zephaniah Swift, author of America's first law book, Christians of different denominations ought to consider that the law knows no distinction among them, that they are all established upon the broad basis of equal liberty. What this is a continuation of the Roman Catholic versus Anglican versus Protestant religions from England that was inherited by the colonies. They're fighting over Christianity. Joseph Story, expert on the Constitution, we are not to attribute this, the First Amendment, prohibition of national religions establishment to an indifference to religion in general, and especially to Christianity, which none could hold in more reverence than the framers of the Constitution. In other words, you're not supposed to go secular on us here. House Judiciary Committee, 1853. Any attempt to level and disregard all religion would have been viewed with universal indignation. They're reviewing the founding documents. They said to level, meaning make all religions equal. If you had done that, it would have been met with universal indignation. This is a House committee. Religion, must be considered as the foundation on which the whole structure, the founders' government, rests. In this age, there could be no substitute for Christianity. House Judiciary Committee, 1853 again. But they, the founders, had no fear of jealousy of religion in itself, nor did they wish to see us an irreligious people. They did not intend to spread over all the public authorities and the whole public action of the nation the dead and revolting spectacle of an atheist apathy. That's socialism, folks. That's secular humanism. That is progressivism. Senate Judiciary Committee, this time not the House, 1853. The real object of the First Amendment was not to countenance, much less to advance Mohammedanism or Judaism or infidelity, which is agnostics and atheism, by prostrating Christianity, but to exclude all rivalry among the Christian sect. The Senate found exactly what I'm telling you. Joseph Story. Such is my veneration for every religion that reveals the attributes of the deity, or a future state of rewards and punishment, that I had rather see the opinions of Confucius or Muhammad inculcated upon our youth than see them grow wholly devoid of a system of religious principles. But the religion I mean to recommend in this place is the New Testament. Benjamin Rush, he's a signer of the Declaration. They all say this. They all say this. These are just handpicked. And now I know we're going to be pressed for time. I want to show you a few things real quick. George Washington. The propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained. Now, if you think he's talking about just any God, you do not know George Washington. Read his letters. He quotes the Bible all the time. He just doesn't tell you the chapter and verse. He just quotes it. John Jay, Supreme Court head justice of the first Supreme Court head justice. No human society has ever been able to maintain both order and freedom, both cohesiveness and liberty, apart from the moral precepts of the Christian religion. Should our republic ever forget this fundamental precept of government, this great experiment will then surely be doomed, or be surely doomed. We're there, brothers and sisters. 5 unanimous decisions. 1799, Maryland General Court. The Christian religion is the established religion of this country. Not by Congress, by the state. 1811, New York Supreme Court. We are a Christian people. By the way, 1811, that's the same time that everybody says, well, Adam said we're not a Christian nation. Wrong. 1822, Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Christianity is and always has been a part of the common law. 1844, U.S. Supreme Court. Why may not the Bible, and especially the New Testament, be read and taught as the divine revelation? They meant in schools. 1892, U.S. Supreme Court. This is a Christian nation. Right before the takeover of the progressive movement. The founder's words, the connection between God, liberty, and the founding of America. We've already read that quote. Come down here to, we've read Adams' quotes a lot, John Adams, and he says that we affected our revolution on the common precepts of Christianity. But his son, John Quincy Adams, is it not that the Declaration of Independence first organized the social compact on the foundations of the Redeemer's mission upon earth? That's the gospel. The direct Declaration of Independence is established on the gospel, the kingdom of Yahweh, that it laid the cornerstone of human government upon the first precepts of Christianity. Same man. The highest glory of the American Revolution was this. It connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity. That man was there. He lived it. His father was called the Atlas of the Revolution. He was there through it all. He's telling you this was founded as a Christian nation. I guess he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? No, I think the people today don't know. But his cousin, Samuel Adams, pay close attention. This day, I trust the reign of political Protestantism will commence. We have explored the temple of royalty and found that the idol we had bowed down to has eyes which see not, ears that hear not our prayers, and a heart like the nether millstone, meaning kings and secular government and all form of other governments. We have this day restored the sovereign to whom alone men ought to be obedient. He reigns in heaven, and with a propitious eye beholds his subjects, assuming that freedom of thought and the dignity of self-direction which he has bestowed on them. From the rising to the setting sun, may his kingdom come. Samuel Adams, 1st of August, 1776. And then here, Fisher Ames, why shouldn't the Bible be taught in the schools? It'll keep us people out of jail. Elias Bedouat, we can only depend on all powerful influence of the Spirit of God, whose divine aid and assistance it becomes us as Christian people most devoutly to implore. Therefore, I move that some minister of the gospel be requested to attend Congress every morning in order to open the meeting with prayer. He served as the president of Congress, signed the Peace Treaty of Paris to end the war for independence, which was signed in the Blessed Trinity, framer of the Bill of Rights, and responded to Thomas Paine's Age of Reason with the Age of Revelation. Charles Carroll, signer of the Declaration, member of the Continental Congress, without morals a republic cannot subsist any length of time. And they, therefore, who are decrying the Christian religion, whose morality is so sublime and pure, which ensures the good eternal happiness, are undermining the solid foundation in morals, the best security for the duration of free government. Yeah, these people didn't think Christianity was important to us at all. John Dickerson, penman of the Revolution and delegate to the Constitutional Convention, chosen because of how his support for Jefferson's reference to the King of Kings. Governments could not give the rights essential to happiness. We claim them from a higher source, from the King of Kings and the Lord of all the earth. Benjamin Franklin, the convention, the Constitutional Convention, was about to fall apart. This elderly man stands up and says, I have lived, sir, a long time. And the longer I live, the more convincing proof I see of this truth, that God governs the affairs of men. He just said, I'm not a deist. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, it is probable that an empire improbable that an empire can rise without his aid. He just paraphrased the Bible. He said, without Yahweh's help, we will not succeed. All right. Patrick Henry. Oh, I love this man. Bad men cannot make good citizens. It is impossible that a nation of infidels or idolaters, atheists and pagans, should be a nation of free men. It is when a people forget God that tyrants forge their chains. A vitiated state of morals, a corrupted public conscience, is incompatible with freedom. No free government or the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people but by a firm adherence to justice, moderation, temperance, frugality, and virtue, and by a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles. The Bible. James Iredell, U.S. Supreme Court Justice. I think the Christian religion is a divine institution, and I pray to God that I may never forget the precepts of his religion or suffer the appearance of an inconsistency in my principles and practice. John Jay has one here. There's more from John Jay. Thomas Jefferson. The precepts of philosophy and the Hebrew code laid hold of action only. Jesus pushed his scrutinizes into the heart of man, erecting his tribunal in the region of his thoughts, and purified the waters at the fountainhead. Yeah, he didn't want anything to do with this. James Madison. It is impossible for the man of pious reflection not to perceive in it, the Constitution, a finger of that almighty hand which has been so frequently and signally extended to our relief in the critical stages of the Revolution. Federalist Papers. You ratified the Constitution under the guidance of the Federalist Papers, and Madison just told you that this country was guided by the hand of the God of the Bible. That country was then therefore ratified under that principle. Fourth Chief Justice of the United States, John Marshall. The American population is entirely Christian, and with us, Christianity and religion are identified. This goes on. 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 John Witherspoon, signer of the Declaration of Independence, clergyman and president of Princeton University, mentor of many of the founders. Shun as a contagious pestilence those especially whom you perceive to be infected with the principles of infidelity, atheism, or enemies to the power of religion. Whoever is an avowed enemy of God, I scruple not, meaning he does not hesitate, to call him an enemy to his country. And then Robert Winthrop, Speaker of the House. Men, in a word, must necessarily be controlled either by a power within them or a power without them, either by the word of God or by the strong arm of man, either by the Bible or the bayonet. Going just a few minutes longer, the founders' words, the essential role of religion in public civil life, this is also on there. John Quincy Adams, we've read that one. Again, we've read that one. John Adams, we've read that one. We've read that one. We've read that one. Papers of John Adams, the idea of infidelity, non-belief in God, cannot be treated with too much resentment or too much horror. The man who can think of it with patience is a traitor in his heart and ought to be excreted as one who adds the deepest hypocrisies to the blackest treason. This is the man who said, well, religion of the Bible is an evil. Well, if you keep reading, he said, but without it, this would be pure hell. They cherry pick things to make the founders look the way they want them to look. These are all words of the founding fathers. Samuel Adams, again and again and again. Elias Bedouet. Folks, I don't know how to stress this. A lot of you watching me today, you probably already believe this. You probably already know it. 250th anniversary of the founding of this country. And we live in a country where the generation that is coming up now does not know God, the one before it. I don't know that the millennials know God. And by that, it doesn't mean that you don't know his name. It means you are not in a personal, intimate relationship with him. You're not obeying his word. You're not following him. You're not bending your will to his. We live in a nation now that rejects and denies the history, the truth of our history that is still recorded. You go to John Barton's museum, you can pick up the letters where these men wrote with their own hands. It's in the ink that they used. It is what was bought. It's not the receipt. It is what was bought. That's what the receipt refers to. There is no higher authority. And today, we claim with our arrogance and hubris the right to just rewrite their words and their intent. When we do that, we claim authority over their free will. Something that even Yahweh, the creator of the universe, holds back from doing. We are not a nation deserving of Yahweh's favor. We are deserving of his wrath. This was established to be a Christian nation. It is no longer such, and therefore, the Constitution is null and void. Not my words, the logical extension of the words we just read. Charlie, comments before we wrap for the day?
Yeah, this is where we're at. The great experiment is in its final throes before it is no longer here. So, like I told my friend the other day as I concluded a conversation, enjoy what's left of your independence.
Founders told you, John Adams, once it's lost forever. That generation will not regain it. We're in that time. I don't mean to be negative, but the question was, the founders even asked, this great experiment, can man rule himself? The answer is no. Tried it under Moses. The answer was no. Every time man has tried to rule himself, the answer is no. He cannot. What you're supposed to learn from this is that you need the creator of the universe to enter into your heart and help you rule for him, help you rule according to his will. You need to surrender to him and let him take over. We see that as, well, I don't want dad telling me what to do. Okay. That's why dad's always bailing you out. Well, when you're no longer living in his house, then you run into the law, and the law don't care. And instead of throwing you in jail, you get thrown in hell. Choose wisely, brothers and sisters. Charlie, last words?
Yeah. I mean, I wish there was a better solution to all this, but we're concluding our study in Jeremiah. Pay attention to what happened there, because it's going to happen here. And we need to be prepared for that. And hopefully you're part of the remnant that will be saved out of it and through it. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say here.
If prophecies repeat, what happened to the northern kingdom when it went into exile? Why? Because it was given a divorce. Not every member of the northern kingdom was lost to Yahweh, spiritually, but the kingdom was divorced. Well, then that means that we are scheduled to be divorced yet again. And when you're no longer under the protection of the Father, you'll be destroyed. What people group destroyed the northern kingdom? The Assyrians, which today would be southern Turkey, Syria, Iraq. Oh, Muslims. Gee, what people group is destroying the United States today? Muslims and godless communists who have blended with Islam to create a new religion. We're repeating history because we don't want to remember it, don't want to learn from it. We're better.
Yeah.
We won't do what those people did.
Remember. Yep.
All right, folks. Not a happy ending. If you didn't like today, you're not going to want to be here Monday. We're going to look the monster in the face Monday. I'm going to make my case that we live in a post-constitutional world. And if we're post-constitutional, we're post-Christian as a people. And if you're post-Christian, Yahweh is not going to help you. Not as a nation. Individually, not as a nation. Going into tomorrow, reflect on the fact that you still live in a region of the world where you have some modicum of liberty. Don't waste it, because you and I have no idea how much longer it'll last. Depending on how long the Messiah delays, tyranny, the likes of which we have never seen before, is on its way. That's what the flock cameras and data centers are about. You will not be able to do anything or go anywhere without them knowing about it and being able to track you in real time. You do not ever get out from underneath that boot. You can't, because you can't even, they'll even be able to read your mind, so to speak. They'll be using predictive Ahmad Ahmed, your Messiah is not my Messiah. Our Muslim friend is saying hopefully the Messiah will return soon. If you're Muslim, you be careful about hoping for that. Because if the real Messiah shows up, it doesn't end well for Islam. Doesn't end well for us either. We'll be counted with them as a nation. Not my words, scripture. All you got to do is read it, understand it in its original context, and apply it, folks. That's it. And then have the courage to accept what you're finding. If you're a Muslim, we do not have the same Messiah. They're not the same person. Not even different beliefs. They're not the same person. You're talking about the 12th Imam. That's not Yeshua Messiah. Your Jesus is not our Jesus. Our Jesus actually died, was resurrected, and ascended to heaven. You're saying that that Isa was never crucified, never died, that he died as a man. That's all he was a man. That's what's in the Sunnah and the Hadith. So yeah, Jesus is the Messiah, but he doesn't come back to accuse Jews and Christians. He does in your eschatology, not in ours. So he's not You're calling him the Messiah, but he isn't. He would be our Antichrist. So, mirror images, not the same person. All right. Enjoy tomorrow. You still have freedom. You're not being hunted for your belief. If you're Christian, you're not being hunted for your beliefs right now like they are in Nigeria. Or do you even know about that? In other parts of the Middle East, where they're leaving Islam and converting over to Christianity, they're being hunted and killed. It's exactly what the scriptures tell us will happen. And they all think they're doing it in the name of God. False God. I'm just going to sign off today. We love you. Thank you for being here. See you Monday. Bye-bye.